What's up? Welcome back. I'm John Stark from TheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today I'm going to talk about Heretic. This is the A24 film. It was recently in theaters. It's presented for my consideration. I actually got a physical screener for this, and the physical screener does not have audio description. I've also watched a film on the A24 portal, which also did not support audio description. So I don't think watching it digitally would have changed that. A24 just needs to put audio description on their physical screeners like Netflix does. Thank you, A24. The lesson in life. My friend Alex Howard of the Dark Room was like, "Why did you watch?" And I was like, because of dates, dude. Because of voting dates. Like, I only have just so much time to be able to get in things at the last minute to get into deadlines for things. And it's like, if I'm going to consider Hugh Grant, I have to at least try to watch this movie at some point, and it's definitely not going to drop on Max between now and then. And it dropped early enough that finding showtimes for this, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's just too much. I do have a real job other than this, which makes it hard for me to go to the theaters all the time. I've been to the theaters a couple times this year. Heretic was just not going to be at the top of my priority list to go to theaters, and it's releasing too late to wait for it to hit Max, which is where A24 films go. So, thus, the screener could have had audio description because blind film critics happen. I'm here. Hi. Hi. Good to meet you. Nice to meet you. Let's talk about Heretic. And is it easy to follow? Easy not to, whatever. Like I told Alex too, I had already had this movie spoiled for me. So, which I don't actually mind spoilers. It's the craft. I don't believe a film lives and dies on a spoiler. So I still need to get from point A to point B. And point B may be like, oh my God, wow, I didn't see that coming. But then if you allow that to dominate how you felt about the rest of the movie, you could almost bamboozle yourself into thinking like the whole movie was great when you're like, was it? Or does it just have a really good twist? The Village. let's I'm just gonna say that. Um I think that's a debatable thing. Like, was the film good or did it just have a memorable twist? Serious question. But with Heretic, this is not necessarily a twist-based movie, although it kind of gets twisty, but not like a complete 180. Although there's some stuff here that you won't pick up without audio description that gets a little bit even more twistier. That I just happen to know that happens in this movie. But basically, we open on two Mormon missionaries. I hesitate to use that word because I don't know. I think of missionary as being like people who actually like go to another country. Like, I've known Mormons before, and I feel like every time they talk about doing missionary work, it's always when they go somewhere that's not like down the street. Like, you know, they're actually like going somewhere to do something in a foreign country. Um, and these two girls are going like door to door, and they want to talk about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And they're obviously met with, no, like people don't want to. And they eventually get to this house. It's Hugh Grant's house, and he lets them in, and they're at first they're hesitant to go in because they're two girls and he's the dude. So, but he says his wife is in the kitchen cooking, making a blueberry pie, and it's weird that the girls. I was thinking about this too. Because the film relies entirely upon them taking his word, and at no point does she ever call out. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no vocalization that there's a wife. Like, come on in, darlings. Come on in. I guess I don't know what Hugh Grant's wife would sound like in this, but Yeah, but she doesn't like call from the other room. There's no commotion. You don't hear anybody else. So they just come in, and it doesn't sound like there's really anybody in the kitchen for this movie. Like, I was just like, what are they doing? But they can smell pie. It smells like pie is being cooked. So I'm like, oh, I guess, whatever. Smells good, whatever. It's like, because this guy can't make a pie. I love the work that this movie does, right? To make you feel like that there's a pie that's being cooked is just like to try to make this whole thing. Anyway, so they sit down and they're talking for a while, and after a while they're like, where the fuck is your wife? um, and they talk a lot about like theology and some stuff sort of around it. And really, this is where I think the film should get props in terms of script, because a lot of this stuff, just the way that they wrote it and everything, it could come across as preachy, but also at the same time, um, I love when one of the two girls, I forget their names, I'm not even really sure it matters. There's one that is more, this the quieter of the two, and seems a little bit more like definitely Mormon. I'm not trying to like throw, but she feels like more like uh, born and bred, and the other one mentions the fact that her mother was like a convert herself, so she is sort of like more loosely tied to Mormonism, although still Mormon, but um, definitely her actions and everything. She's more assertive, and there's a point where she challenges Hugh Grant and in what he's saying, and says, you've conveniently said this, this, and this, but you've left out this, this, and this, and you're asking us to do this, but really what it is this. And I thought that scene was probably the best scene in the movie for me, because it was coming off of a great sort of long tirade from Hugh Grant where he talks for like at least 10 minutes. And then she bounces back because at that point they realize that they're not getting out of this house. Like I think they're starting to realize that this was not a good choice, and there's no wife. Like, they're just like, fuck, what the hell. He's in this weird house too. Like, the doors lock, and they can't get him to unlock the doors. There's a lot of doors. It's some like weird Winchester house or something. I don't know. Where like lots of doors and they don't know where to go. But I just kind of felt like there were potholes that I could go back and look through at the film. As somebody who had this film spoiled for me and I watched this without audio description, it's like, as a movie, I could go back through and say, well, choices here and choices here, like, let's make better choices that support these characters in a stronger way. But at the same time, and also kind of like the third act does kind of have some madness stuff that I'm aware of, but doesn't really like live up to. It doesn't really come through in the audio description. I just know sort of where the film goes in the third act and some of the things that happened in the third act. Symbolisms with butterflies and stuff. Yes, I know that stuff is in there. No, it's not. You cannot follow it without audio description. So the stuff that happens in the third act of the film was really difficult. That's where the audio description, that's where there's less conversation and more actual like plot. So, but I think Grant is excellent in this. But at the same time, people are like, oh my God, he should be Oscar nominated. I was like, for what? For reading dialogue really well? Essentially, that's what he's doing. I mean, it's just really well written dialogue. And he's delivering it really well. It's a highbrow actor doing a role that normally would not be given to a highbrow actor. Like, Hugh Grant is somebody who should have had. I consistently always say that for me, the nomination that we missed, that we fucked up, was About a Boy. He absolutely deserved a nomination for About a Boy. I think it's his best work, and he brought versions of himself that had lived up into that point, along with like a flip on that and really just embodied everything that was in Nick Hornsby's book, and really brought to life that character. And unfortunately, people just don't look at movies like, and Toni Collette is excellent in that movie as well. That film should have had 2 acting nominations, but sadly it did not. So now we're at Heretic, and I like him in this, but like career best performance, I don't think so. I just think he's excellent at reading dialogue, and he's excellent at reading this dialogue, and this dialogue feels like it was written perfectly for Hugh Grant or somebody like Hugh Grant to read. But is it a film where I feel like it could only be Hugh Grant? Like he's bringing such unique quality to the film? No, I mean, take another highbrow British actor, maybe someone like Jude Law. I think Jude Law probably would have done almost the same thing here. So it's just, he's sort of presentationally very nice at the beginning, and sits down. Seems warm and welcoming and very open, and that's something that a lot of these actors who play charming characters who have also played villains before, they can balance that. And then he just bounces off. He has great rapport with the girls, like back and forth bouncing ideas. So then there's this horror element that's thrown into it. So it's a little bit mainstream for A24. But then when you get into the third act, you realize, it's not really mainstream. It's just kind of like, what the fuck's happening here? The third act is weird. This is very much one of those third act movies. So yeah, I liked Heretic. Didn't love it. It's not gonna be in my top 10. I'll watch it again with the audio description at some point, probably, just because. But the hype around Hugh Grant's performance is solid, but when we have to narrow it down to 5, I don't mind him not making the 5 as much as I do Demi Moore not making the 5. I do think that is the best performance of her career. I'm not sure this is his. So I would have appreciated audio description. It was a bit of a mess trying to figure out. And of course, these conversations that they're having, I would have loved to know sort of like what the house looked like on the interior, even before we get to the third act, where it desperately needs audio description. I would have loved to just know more of what the house looks like, because it feels like it's a very interesting house. So just something that supports that. Topher Grace shows up for like 5 seconds in this. It's funny, and he leaves. It's like, thanks, Topher. Bye. So that's Heretic. That's my thoughts on Heretic. It's unwatchable. My grade is unwatchable. My official current grade for this film is unwatchable because of lack of audio description, the way it was presented to me, even though this film has an existing audio description track, which is what makes it everything more frustrating. But a floating grade, I think this is worth a B. Yeah, I think this is probably a B, could be a B minus, could be a B plus, but I feel like this is somewhere in the B range. I was really enthralled by the conversation, and honestly, the film could have just been conversation. I never needed the third act. I thought the strength of this movie is in like the first 2/3 of the movie. Like the third act is where you go, well, I guess it's a horror movie now. You know, you're like, well, then might as well. But honestly, a lot of the ideas and stuff, and that's why Hugh Grant's performance matters so much, is in the first 2/3 of the movie. So I really dug that part, and that part is sort of boosting my grade, is because even without audio description, I thought what he had to say was really well written, and he delivered it excellently, which is exactly why people are talking about him this year. So there's a reason behind it. There's a reason behind everything, and that's the reason. So anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I will see you guys on the other side.